Hi, I'm Sam with JBugs.com, and we've got all this aftermarket engine tin fit to this aftermarket engine case. Not an easy job, but it can be done. Stay tuned while I show you how. And we are going to get started by turning this unassembled long block into a turnkey engine. Start this, run it, break it in. Because it's a brand new engine, we're going to have to run this thing through a cam break-in, but we'll cover those steps when we get there. So before I start grinding and cutting things up, I'm going to try and seal off some of the holes on this engine, starting with the spark plugs. Probably tape off our intake ports. I'll probably put on an oil cooler. Maybe I'll drop our distributor in. I just got a couple of these holes better sealed off so that nothing gets into this engine. We've got some stock replacement NGK plugs. These are BR6HSs. They come pre-gapped typically. That's what that cardboard piece is for, to keep that tip from getting damaged. Also important, this resistor cap. That is going to have to be removed because that won't fit that with that in place. So we got to pull that off so the spark plug can go in there, and we'll do that before we put the spark plug in the head. All right, before my spark plugs go in, I want to make certain I put some anti-seize because we have steel going into aluminum. We want to make certain that they aren't going to get locked in place. Really easy just to print this off of our website. It's got most all of the engine torque specs for everything that we're going to need to go through. Spark plugs, 22 foot-pounds. Oil cooler adapter. The Hoover bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 2 seals that sit in between here, but before I do any of that, I want to rinse these out with some brake clean real quick. Set those guys in place there. Our oil cooler. Set that in place. A couple washers, a couple nuts. Take our Hoover bit, set that in place, and that just blocks all that air from escaping out the bottom side, and it can only go on that one way. Oil cooler nut, 5. Yeah, that one's stripped. Those threads don't look stripped at all. Yeah, those aren't stripped. Since it is an eye lock. Ooh, it stripped the nut. I knew I felt something going bad. Well, dagnabbit. Hold, please. Turns out we're on back order on these right now, and I don't have another one handy here at work. I've got a couple at home. It's not going to stop us from doing as much as we can. So I'm going to get this bolted on to the engine case with our lower bolt in place so that this will at least hold everything for the meantime in between time. And those guys just sit in right there. No sealant. Install our nuts. These goes to 14 foot-pounds. These bottom studs are always so fun. So that seals off that and that. And these do come with an O-ring. However, I prefer original O-rings. So we'll pop that off. Distributor clamp, we're going to slide him on, and then we're going to put our new clamp in. Specially designed for push rod and flat tappet engines. Basically, it's got lots of zinc. Doesn't matter if you're using Valvoline or Castrol or Lucas or Amsoil or Torco or Penn Grade, any of those oils. It doesn't matter what you use as far as oil, just make certain it's got zinc. And that's just the advanced in our distributor and a little bit of play in those teeth, but that's what we're looking for. If it was up just a little bit more, you can spin it all the way around. That means it's not fully engaged. So push it down until it stops, and then turn it until you can push it down some more. Make sure you're locked in place. Now we know that this is number 1 top dead center. Oil pressure switch, nothing fancy. And these just thread in dry. They have a tapered thread. And that just keeps junk from getting into our engine. We're going to get to modifying the case or the tin so that that tin goes in. Hitting here as well as there. Probably the best thing to do is probably just going to be notch out our tin a little bit there. Fit, proper, then pretty. Let me go through and start doing some grinding and some cutting. Let's see how that does. Hey, hey, hey. I can live with that, but that hole I'm going to have to open up just a little bit. So let me get a burr bit and do that. I should be able to get 2 sheet metal screws in there. No problem. In the hole. There we go. So we'll install a pulley. And that feels pretty good. All right. It appears that we're hitting on this back corner right there. So I'm going to cut this back lip right there. Probably need some clearance right across the back of that case right there in this area. There. So I'm going to do a little notch right there. Flatten that area out a little bit and knock that edge off as well. Everything else for the most part looks really good. Everything there is good. Width-wise is decent. Width-wise over here is really good, but obviously when that's in place, that fan shroud doesn't go down far enough. We've got to fix that. So let me do some trimming. And we'll see how she goes. Yeah, that seemed to have made a big difference. That should be good there. In the back. There. I want that to come down a little bit further as well. Just clean up some of the back edges. I think now my cylinder tin is getting in the way of me getting a happy fit over here. Pretty tight fit there. Relatively nice fit there. And a good fit there. I'm going to put together our fan and backing plate, get that bolted onto our alternator, or get our alternator stand bolted up, and then I'll get our alternator set in place, bolted to the fan shroud to make certain that this thing's sitting where it should be, or before I finalize or call these ready. Got a fan, got an alternator, backing plate. That is just a reinforcing spacer. Sits like that. That hole lines up with the bottom here, like so. All those, we'll put some washers and nuts on those, tighten those down to 5 foot-pounds. With that, we come in with our fan hub kit. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't know why they come with 2 spring washers, but they do. Just get that keyway lined up. Make sure it's on the right way. This is keyed. That needs to be facing out. Yeah. 35 millimeter wide fan for our doghouse fan shroud. There we are. Ooh, yeah. We're gonna need some shims. I'm gonna just do 1, 2, 3. That looks pretty darn close. Wavy washer, spring washer, whatever you want to call it. That seems really good. Two ooga-oogas. Very minimal wobble out of that. And when it's not resting on the fan shroud, it's actually pretty quiet. I'm going to call that good, and from here, anything else that we get any noise out of, we're going to let it self-clearance. No hitting in the fan shroud either. That's good. And I'll give him a quick nut and nut, temporarily, of course. No nylocks, one alternator strap. And with that, we can see we are way high still. We're just going to start coming through, clearancing everything across the bottom here, and across the bottom there, and across the bottom there. Basically that same distance. Let's see how that does. Let's get the doghouse oil cooler in the doghouse. All right, well, I see it. It's on that step on the back of the cooler. Right behind here, we are getting held up. That's almost doable. Still really not happy with that, but perhaps if I can get it forced in place, whatever happens to move out of the way will make itself known. Got that in. I don't like that sound. That tells me something's hitting on the front and pushing the fan shroud that way. So that's good to know. I'm going to pull this off and hit that edge. And for the most part, it seems pretty good. Well, that seems much happier. We're touching there, almost touching there. That seems to be pretty decent. I'm going to go with that. Over here, major point of discontent is this cylinder head. So I'm going to have to grind that little edge right there. You can see it's pushing right there. So I'll get the die grinder out and take out a little bit of that. This side's okay. See that line around that exhaust port, we can't get that flat. So I'm going to put a sheet metal screw, and then I'm going to try to take a hammer and a punch and reshape that. That guy's bent out of shape there. All right, well, all in all, we do have a pretty decent gap on the back side over here. That might be fitment this way where this needs to come in, but we'll get our fan shroud on and check the alignment there. We're in there, good. In there. Ooh, that's way out, yeah. Although when it's down in place, it's actually not too bad, but no. We're definitely going to be trimming a lot on that edge right there. That'll allow this tin to go forward in those slots and in. We do have a really large gap across the back here, and that's unfortunately not uncommon. Okay, clear there. Fitment here and fitment there. Well, shoot, now honestly, this is actually keeping this from dropping down any further. So let me Do that. Something else on this side is now, might be the fact that that isn't back in the case. There we go. And that edge right there. Square that up a little bit. Hey. That cured a lot of the problems with this thing getting out of shape too. The gap over here, once we put a screw in, is minimized, if not eliminated. So that looks pretty good. We've got a gap underneath in the tin right there. And with this being pushed out of shape by our engine stand, that's probably all that's keeping that from getting lined up against the back here. But the nice thing is that that edge is past that pot. We don't have a gap at the top. It's now inside that edge. Is it as good as original? No. But it will do. It all seems good. No noise. Next up is our deflector tin. Start back here with this guy. That's fairly decent. Yeah, so that's got to come forward about 1/16 of an inch. There we go. That lines up nicely there. That lines up nicely there. That's there. Let's try to get this guy in this side. So once this tin gets bent into shape, this bolt has to stay in place here, but this one's going to have to come out because the engine tin, this place has 2 holes for the screws. This only has 1. That one gets covered. I think I'm going to also take this over to our bench vise, crimp this in here, and then hammer it over. Cut it out. There we go. That one has to be off. So, loosen this guy. This right there is just causing a little bit of a headache on that hole. And since there's not much meat on that hole, I'm going to cut back this piece of tin right here ever so slightly. One, two, three, 4 more screws. Note that I am putting all the screws in place before I tighten any of the screws. And also, while I'm fitting all this stuff, I'll note that it's a heck of a lot easier if the engine's out of the car. If you have to work around a car while doing all this, I feel for you. I've been there. It's doable. It's just a lot more work. All right, from here, the only things that we haven't dealt with are the Hoover bit. Kind of hard to work on when the oil cooler's not bolted on. The front engine tin, but we can't put this in because this engine stands in the way. If we were going to be running heater boxes, we would have to put in heater channels. So let's try and get those guys fit up. Kind of that same method. Bend it, cut it, grind it, make it fit. That's all there is to it. Yeah, let's do this side so you can see the process of reshaping that around that, and or probably just going to end up cutting it. This will bolt in there, bolt there. That hole right there, we'll open that up. We'll get that shaped. That screw lines up there well. This piece is removable so that you could access the thermostat, which would bolt to the case here if you had one. Leave those guys loose for some wiggle room there. And that seems well within our realm of adjustability. And the good part or the bad part, depending on which way you look at it, is the more original tin you have, the less work you have to do. because massaging any one of these pieces to fit original pieces isn't all that bad of a deal. But when you have to massage every piece, like we have to do in this case, it gets to be a little bit overwhelming. But again, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Let's start by opening that hole up with the burr bit. That might go. I'm going to pull it off now and finish it the rest of the way. It's just a lot easier to mark that way. B-E-A, beautiful. That should do that. When we go to do the other side, if we ever put this in a car, as this is going to be a bench testing engine, it's probably going to live on this stand for a while. But once we pull this off, we can put in this side, modify this heater tin as necessary, similar to what we did there, but it's only one piece, not three, or two rather. So it won't be nearly as difficult, but still needs to be clearanced around that a little bit by the looks of it. It's actually not that bad, all things considered. If the stand wasn't in the way, all that would then allow this piece to bolt in. It clears over here, no problem. That sheet metal screw down below, this might need to be cut out or cut up over the top of that, or kind of bent around it possibly, but it looks like it's going to be clear. And over here, it's just that's one screw right here, and it actually clears right there. Not that big of a deal. This tin, like I said, usually fits fairly well. And then obviously to finish off the back side of things, once we get our Hoover bit in place and we get some proper studs to finish installing that, we could then install our doghouse tin, doghouse exit tin, if you will, foam seals to finish off that edge there. So this guy will install there. Single sheet metal screw, we'll get him in. And this actually drops through that hole right there, and it actually comes with an O-ring or a rubber seal to go around and seal against the back of that. Kind of just sits right on there. On the inside is how I normally do them. That way you can just push it into the back side here. From the factory, I don't know if they were glued here or how they got them to stick there so well, but that's where the original one sits. And then this guy sits like that, somehow or another, typically. Might be that that is slightly out of shape. Yeah, probably out of the way because of that, but that guy would sit there. So with the exception of this heater channel and the front engine tin, which is kind of weird why they call it the front engine tin when it's not next to the rear main seal. Front engine tin's not in place. This heater channels aren't in place because since this is going to be a bench engine, we're just going to keep this on the stand. We'll be able to test parts, carburetors, alternators, distributors, pulley fitment, etc. This is just going to live on the engine stand. So this engine tin is going to be coming off pretty much indefinitely. There's no reason for me to have this heater channel on this side either, but at least I was able to show you guys how to get those fit. This is going to come off after I show you how I cut the heat riser holes, but there we have it. This is all of the engine tin. Fit. Is it as good as original? Absolutely not, but it works. It'll do the job. And now you see why I did all of this fitment of all these engine tin pieces before I installed the intake manifold and everything else on the engine. I got all these pieces cut down, ground, hammered on, beat on, clearanced so that I could get every single nut and bolt in place, and I could eliminate most all of the gaps between the tin and the engine and the cylinder heads. And as we can see, we've done a pretty good job of it. Everything is in place. Hard to see back underneath here, but everything's covered. We've got no gaps. There's no gaps here at the side. Everything all the way around fits really well. Our alternator spins, no grinding inside the fan shroud. Everything here is as it should be. So that's a wrap. We've got all the engine tin in place, and now we can get on to building the rest of this engine, all the way up to the air cleaner, and up to the point where we can start this thing. But that'll be in another video. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Stay tuned.